You're listening to Arsenal Pass, a flesh and blood podcast for players by players. And all about strategy, leveling up, and the latest news in the world of Wraith. Welcome to Arsenal Pass.
Hello everyone and welcome back to episode 241 of Arsenal Pass. Hayden here with Pankaj, Bhojwani. As always, this week on the pod, we are taking a look back at 2025 and the first of a couple of episodes where we're going to reflect back on the year in Flesh and Blood across multiple things, including the events, the cards, the games we've played, the friends we've made along the way, everything in between. But this episode in particular, we are looking at the product releases this year and the major product releases this year and having a bit of a retrospective and discussion and doing one of my favorite things, and I also know it's one of Pankaj's favorite things, rating and giving you some thoughts and feelings on the product releases this year, the impact it's had, or that they've all had on Classic Constructed, how we feel about the limited format this year, all of those things and much, much more. But first of all, Pankaj, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited for this one, Hayden. That's right, people. We're going to be this is how we're starting off our retrospective season of Arsenal Pass episodes, looking through all the major product releases in 2025, of which there were 4, so the 3 booster sets and Mastery Pack Guardian. Going to be rating them. At first, I thought we could do a tier list, but then Hayden wouldn't talk to me if I said the word tier list. So I had to change the idea. I changed my pitch. I was like, oh, this is Hayden, so we're going to be rating them on a scale of 1 to 10 in separate categories instead. Gotta know your audience, right? Also, I was thinking, by the way.
Oh, I have one thing to point out first. You said the 4 major product releases of this year, but weirdly, you said Mastery Pack Guardian instead of Armory Deck Gravy Bones, so I was a bit confused about that.
Yeah, or Pack Guardian Mastery. Mastery Guardian Pack.
Guardian Mastery
Who
Pack.
even knows what it's called?
Mastery Guardian.
As you were doing the intro, I was thinking about this. Yo, you think we should try one of those cold opens one day? Apparently all the cool kids do that these days.
Insert cold. We've done that before. We've done that before on the pod.
Oh, okay. Well, we should maybe try that. You know, in this retrospective season, let's maybe do a few more cold opens as well. Even the dev talks do that. You know?
Yeah, that's fine. It's a fad. You know, I want our podcast to have longevity, and you know, when you're a version of a boomer in 25 years, and you go back and you listen to Arsenal Pass, you're like, the continuity, it's so nice. I don't know. Yeah, we can do it.
Timeless classic vibe. That's what you're trying to go for.
We can do whatever. Right. And people will say, I remember when Super Slam came out. Or I remember the day when High Seas came out. Anyway. This week in Flesh and Blood, Pankaj, tell me about your week in Flesh and Blood.
It's been pretty light on the Flesh and Blood side of things. Just some Sage discussion, some preliminary Sage discussion with the team. Been spectating some of the games as the teammates are, dipping their toes in the format. And all I'll say for now is that I hope it gets better. I think it has that 20 health format disadvantage, if you will, where games just end in 2 or 3 turns because the decks are built like kill you in 2 or 3 turns. This is particularly the Rangers are quite the culprit for this, Azalea and Lexi both. So yeah, just hoping when Compendium comes out, it's a little healthier, a little bit more of the Flesh and Blood as we were promised, I think, with like the low power format, where it's a little bit more back and forth. Games go longer. Yeah, that's been my week. What about you?
Even lighter. I've literally, other than building a Rhinar deck for CC, which I spent about 45 minutes on. I was like, I'll come back to this at another time. And looking at a little bit of, like you say, Silver Age, really not much, honestly. So I'm fine with that. You know, I like having some downtime from Flesh and Blood. I think it's really important. So,
okay. All right. So Beat Chest not doing it for you then?
Maybe it might do it for me.
Okay. All right. I heard someone call Beat Chest, it's just like Rhinar's version of being Bolton, where just like IPing and stuff. You're just like constantly like -1 intellect, and I was like, damn, is that feels kind of true sometimes. I see some of these cards, and it's like, yep, here's my 2 card 6. If I discard a card, it becomes 8. So you did a 3 card 8. I'm like, yeah, that's
But
kind of Bolton-esque, huh?
But I intimidated you. Yeah,
you're so right. The value.
I'm excited for Rhinar's potential in Silver Age, though. That would be cool. You know, I'd love, you know, with the new Beat chess mechanics, the chest piece as well that lets you draw a
The
card,
chess
all those
piece
kind of
looks good.
things. Yeah, so I don't know. We'll see. Anyway,
Yeah. Although
news.
that won't help with the 20 health thing, for
No,
sure.
no.
Or the 3-turn format, because right now will intimidate your hand and just kill you.
Yeah, but you
yes,
don't
let's
have the
move on.
Majestics. You don't have the Majestics, so maybe. We'll see.
True. Although the fear card, was that smell fear or something? Seems
Yeah, true.
like
You've
it'll be
still
pretty
got
strong. I
barrage
think
and beatdowns
that's
as well.
True. All right, on to the news. A little lighter news, obviously, this part of the year, but we did get some information on how how invites to nationals are being handled. So we have RTNs as usual, and if you top 4 your RTN, you get an invite. But there's also a new system in place that is XP. XP that is specific to the Road to Nationals events that you are playing in. So you could play a whole bunch of them and say you don't top 4 any of them, but you've won a bunch at, like, say, 5 or 6 of them. You get enough XP, you can get an invite that way too, which I think is pretty cool. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I like it. I think it rewards players for showing up, playing multiple Road to Nationals, trying their best, right? Maybe they get a couple of top 8s, but they just don't get there. But because they got a decent chunk of wins and they got to top 8, they still are going to have a great chance at qualifying. I really like it, and I think it's great for game stores as well, because it incentivizes. Nationals gets more and more competitive, and I think it's great to ensure that players are going to have another incentive of feeling like, will I really be able to top 4 one of these? I'm still learning, or I'm still developing my skills in this game. But you know what? I could attend 4 of them, and I might be able to get enough XP to qualify, and that's also great for game stores as well, and just great for the game overall. So I'm a big fan. I think this is a really smart change for Road to Nationals. I think we know Elo's going away. It's not a great system. Things change for next year, and I think this one for Nationals qualification is a really good pivot. Actually, I actually think this is one of the best of these sorts of qualifying changes that we've ever had in Flesh and Blood.
I'm a big fan, for sure. I mean, just get more people out to the Nationals. Nationals are tier 3 events, right? They're like bigger than a calling, so like more prestigious than a calling. And I think there's a lot of draw to Nationals events. I think there's a whole class of players who wouldn't travel internationally for the game, but would totally be excited to step up their game and to get to play in a higher stakes level of event. I think Nationals like perfect for that, and just get more people out to them. I think there's a huge appetite for something like that.
Yeah.
They also revealed that they'll be continuing the policy that you cannot play a ProQuest if you've already won one for the ProQuest Yokohama season. And I mean, once again, this sort of like blew up on Twitter and became really controversial. And I'm sort of left being like, I'm missing something. I think I'm maybe missing the impact this is having. I'm just not sure why this is being discussed as much as it is. I'm like, cool, all right, this is it now. It's like, it doesn't seem like a super controversial thing. To me, I could see the pros and cons. I'm just not entirely sure why it's this big of a deal. But Hayden, do you have thoughts?
I thought we're past this conversation. Honestly, I can't be bothered with it. Like,
yep.
Yeah. I just can't. I think it's really straightforward. It's really simple. I think it's been a success. This change to. If you've won one, then you can't. You've qualified. You're done. You're 1 and done, or you're 2 and done. Whatever it is, you've got your qualification. It's both from. I mean, just look at the numbers and the size of this ProQuest season. It's been fantastic, and all these players that I've spoken to that have benefited from this, I think are just are very, very happy. And also, as someone who doesn't. Other players who don't benefit from it, I think have also been happy about it, and for other players. So, yeah,
It's so interesting that you look at like the size of this ProQuest season as like evidence for this policy working. Because to me, I just don't think this policy has had that much of an impact on either side. I think the game and the sets have just gotten better. The popularity of the game has increased, and that's what's led to like the bigger ProQuest season. It's because I'm like, you know what? How many more players are showing up because the player who won last week cannot show up this week, right? Are you like, is the argument being made here that 5 more people signed up this week because that one player won last week. Like that doesn't quite make sense to me. I think the game just gotten more popular, which is why I'm not sure why this is being discussed as much as it is, because it just feels like a pretty low impact on like both sides, and for some reason it's like blowing up. Is like my take.
It's not being discussed. It's being complained about by a very small subsection of players who are vocal about it, to be honest, and probably get some hate from players that I know personally. But you know what? I just don't agree with you, and I'm going to be very clear about it. I do think you might be underestimating the impact that does have, though. And I don't think it's actually specifically, that player won last week, and now I'm going to go to this Pro Quest this weekend. I think it's more of a psychological thing in terms of, the best I can, because I think you commit to a Pro Quest season. You look ahead at time and you say, I'm going to go to this one. I'm going to hit these three. I'm going to make space in my weekend to go play them. And if you know as you go through that time that your chance of qualification is going to get better because the best players in your region and that someone wins week 1, someone wins week 2, that you're going to have a better chance to qualify. I do think there is a big psychological piece to that. I do think that is decisions that people are making to head out to ProQuest. And I think the bigger impact is just the success of the game and the size of people wanting to enter into playing in these competitive seasons. The health of the previous format, I think, was a big part of that for Classic Constructed. But I do think there is an impact, and I do think it's been a positive impact rather than for a small minority a negative feeling that they have. And look, I say, I can't bother talking about this. I'm annoyed about it, whatever. I'm not really. It just keeps coming up. And for those players that do feel hard done by, I get it. You want to play Flesh and Blood. 100% get it. But I don't think this is stopping people from playing Flesh and Blood.
I fully agree with you that I do think this has had a positive impact. I think just where I keep coming back to, it's just like how much. If I ask you quantify, overall how many more players committed to the ProQuest season because of this change, I don't think that number warrants the amount of discussion that's happening over this. I do agree it's positive, and so we should continue this, but not to, oh my god, let's have all-out arguments on Twitter about whether this is good or not for the health of the game. I think it's time to move on to the Command and Cookout.
I was going to say, in the spirit of that, should we move on? But I did have one thing. Someone pointed out on Twitter, I think it might have been Michael Dalton. Shout out to Michael Dalton. I think Michael Dalton, a runaway or has been a runaway at some point. Anyway, did make a tweet asking, why are Silver Age PQs the same number of rounds as CC PQs? I think that's a great point. We've spoken about this with Silver Age of I would like to see more rounds. So just while we're on the news, because of part of this, I guess, the Pro Quest for Yokohama and Vegas and things like that, there was some announcements of product and promos and whatnot. That's where the Teklo cards came from. Pankaj, I found out as well. That for Silver Age, February 21st to March 1st for the Pro Quest season, that the rounds are going to be the same, it seems. So yeah, I agree with that. I think we should have more rounds of Silver Age than we should of Classic Constructed, and get into top 8 with an X3 record or something like that. I think it'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, I could see that.
Helps me with my variance conversations.
Yes.
Onto the news. Onto the Command and Cookout, rather. Yeah. And I'm gonna throw this one over to you because this is a question that came directly to you. But first of all, just say, if you want to get your questions in the Command and Cookout, please do so. You can either drop them in the YouTube comments below if you are a video consumer of our content. If you're an audio-only consumer and you're on Spotify, you can also leave your question or just a nice comment for us, or maybe it's not a very nice comment after what I just said, in the Spotify comments each and every week. You can also, if you're an Arsenal Pass patron, go onto our Patrons Discord, leave your question, email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com, or if you see us in person, Pankaj, you can give us a nice handwritten note.
Which is exactly what this person did. This was a handwritten note I received in Philadelphia, and it was very heartwarming. It came from a young gentleman called Camden Gross. And his question was, what advice would you give to a young person trying to play competitively? I'm 12 and have to travel with my dad. Hayden, do you have thoughts?
I do, because I've been Camden. I was someone who was trying to play competitive card games at 11, 12 years old, and was in a very similar position. Sounds like we've had a bit of a similar, I guess, journey in some ways, or we had some similarities, because my dad also took me to events and was kind enough to give up his time and allow me to travel and accompany me to, I think I went to my first Magic Grand Prix when I was 12 years old. He would take me to ProQuest, or the equivalent, PTQs for Magic. Managed to make my first final, I think, when I was like 12 years old, around Camden's age of a PTQ as well. And I think it gave me such a I wanted to play the game, and having that support to do so was fantastic. So I'm glad that Camden has that. Shout out to Camden's dad. In terms of, if you're a young person, you're wanting to play competitively, I mean, the biggest piece of advice is do what you're doing, because you're probably already playing, honestly, is just keep playing. And, if you've got the aspiration to play competitively, I think, talk to your parents and get their support. And if they're willing to help support you, get them to help you pick the events to go to as well. I always recommend, if there's a local LGSs are the best, right? And generally there'll be someone in the store, like someone that works there, a staff member, or maybe it's even the owner of the LGS. And they are always so fantastic, I think, at encouraging young people to play games, TCGs, right? Because a lot of them have been in that same situation. And I think if you're a parent of a young child who wants to get into playing competitive card games, I think really align yourself with your LGS staff and owners and get their advice as well of what's some great events for my kid to play, or how do you think that I should help them manage a bit of a collection so they can play these sorts of games, because that's also not easy. I think there is other young people in the space as well, so I think trying to get to know them as well, or learn about them as well, so that you can form some friendships as well, first and foremost, but also have some people that you can know will be at events as well to hang out with and get games in with as well. But honestly, the biggest thing is, if you have the opportunity to go to your armories, go to your ProQuests and your Road to Nationals, that is the best way to learn, is by playing against players that are more experienced, players that have been in that space for a long time. They also, I think, you can play the little kid card a little bit, which I always love, which is people will be nice to you, so they will tell you tips and tricks, and they will help you out, especially if you ask for it. So I don't know, that's my advice. That's what I did anyway.
I'm glad you brought up the emphasis on the LGS, because that is basically the crux of my answer to this question as well, which is focus on the locals for now. While your travel is somewhat dependent on whether your dad can join you. Also, by the way, huge shout out to Cameron Gross's dad as well. It was such a sweet interaction, the two of them. We were chatting, and they were talking about how they listen to Arsenal Pass on their drives for events and stuff. It was very, very touching. But yeah, so while sometimes dad's busy, can't drive you somewhere far away, focus on the locals. And a player who really sticks out to me when I think about this story of someone who started young and has made its way onto a bit more of an international stage in Flesh and Blood is actually Jude Cornett from the PNW region. He was known in the Pacific Northwest as just that grinder. People used to call him our local Brody, for example. He'd be there at armories, he'd be playing a whole bunch of the qualifiers like ProQuest and RTNs and doing really well in those regions until got a little bit older and then was able to start traveling on his own. I think off the back of some of the winnings in these little in the local tournaments as well. So that would be my advice. Just focus on the locals and build your support there. Get the experience from there, because there is a lot to be gained from your locals, regardless of which region you're in.
Yeah, my last piece would be have fun. And I think when you're younger as well, card games in particular, they can be this great outlet. And I think just my only other piece of advice would be to balance that out, right? There's lots of other things that happen in life as you grow up, as you're going to school, and other hobbies and friends and these sorts of things. And so, enjoy it and play it and do what you can, but also balance it off with everything else as well. I think that's also really important to be doing.
Nah, he's trying to play competitively, all in on Fab. What are you talking about?
Don't become a degenerate too early. Also, I love that you mentioned Jude. I think there's been a few other examples of that. Even Brody, right? Brody's mum is well known because of the amount of events that Brody was able to travel to, and had his mum there to help support him when he wasn't able to travel by himself, because he was a young man, right? But also shout out to Jude, because I reckon Jude probably could have gone on a plane. People wouldn't have batted an eyelid if Jude hopped on a plane at 13. I would have thought that height, stature, and facial hair.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. If you want to get your questions in for the Commander Cookout, please do so. We love questions like that. We love all questions, of course. So you can, as we said, email us at arsenalpassfab@gmail.com. You can drop comments in YouTube comments below. You can jump on Spotify and do the same, or you can give us a nice handwritten note like we got from Camden and his dad. So thank you very much. Pankaj, I'm going to pass over to you again. This is the Pankaj show, this podcast, but I'll let you take us into the main topic of the pod.
Okay, awesome. So we are going to talk about the major product releases this year, which was the 3 booster sets, Hunted, High Seas, Super Slam, and Mastery Pack Guardian as well. We're not going to do every single Armory deck because I don't know about you, Hayden, but I barely remember that the Max Armory deck even came out this year. And we will be... Wait, that was this year?
I can't remember.
Also, that was an Azalea Armory deck, by the way. It wasn't even Riptide. Anyway, so for that reason, we aren't doing Armory decks. We're just doing the major releases. We're going to be rating them on a scale of 1 to 10 because I couldn't say tier list because Hayden will get mad at me. Now, these ratings, first, we're going to rate them individually on 3 separate categories. The first one being flavor, the second one being the limited experience, if applicable. So, we won't go over limited experience for Super Slam, for example. And then the third one will be CC impact / balance. So we'll rate the 3 categories separately, and then we'll give an overall rating for the product. And this is, by the way, 100% objective. I'm going to just define the categories a little bit further. So the first one, which is flavor, is about how much we enjoyed the themes of the set, and also how well did the set deliver on those themes. So, for example, I would rate a set like Heavy Hitters high in this category, where I think the set delivered on the themes, all Coliseum themes, like very, very well, with a lot of the mechanics in the game as well, like Clash, for example. I think it's very thematic. But I would rate a set like Outsiders a little bit lower in this category. But like Outsiders did have these diseases and stuff, but then it didn't feel very cohesive with like the themes of the pits, for example. And then there's like Katsu and Benji there who are also just like not interacting with any of these diseases things at all. It just felt a little bit like the flavor part of that was maybe a little bit on the lower end. So that's the flavor category. Then we have the limited category. This one is fairly straightforward. How enjoyable was the limited experience, both drafting wise and gameplay wise? So this includes how much depth and archetypes did we feel were there in the drafting portion? How much back and forth and interactive gameplay was there in the games portion? And then finally, we have the CC part, which is sort of what was the CC impact like and what was the CC balance like? And I just want to note, this isn't a scale of did the set have impact, but it's more about whether the impact was at a good or reasonable level. Again, 100% objective over here. So, for example, even though Bright Lights had like barely any CC impact and MST had tons of CC impact, I would rate both of them lower in this category because to me, MST's impact wasn't something that's desirable. It had a lot of impact, but it was not, hey, we've introduced a few players in a metagame, some other players are now in as well. It was just the metagame while it was around and single-handedly dictated everything. So to me, that's on the lower end of the CC category of like desirable CC impact / CC balance. So all these 3 categories, going to rate them on a scale of 1 to 10 and then give our overall. Yeah. Hayden, do you have any thoughts on that whole paradigm?
I'm looking forward to it. I think I'm glad that this will be objective, as you say. No, I mean,
for sure.
I think you're going to get our thoughts very clearly, and I think even just hearing you talk about your example there with Bright Lights and MST, even that sort of, I think I'll be interested to see where we agree on this, which is going to be cool.
Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and start with Hunted. This was released 31st of January of this year, and it gave us Syndra, Fang, Mario, and Slippy. So just a quick refresher for people. Syndra has basically been a play of the meta since her release. It had its low points maybe during the year, especially when Slippy was prevalent. Fang had like a small splash in the gravy Slippy meta, but otherwise has been kind of non-existent. Mario kind of had to wait for new to LL, but since then has basically been somewhere between like B and A tier. And then Slippy was dominant post High Seas release, but then like pre Bond's ban. This set also introduced the marked mechanic, which is also important to note available to non-talented ninjas and assassins too. not just for the heroes in this set, which are all talented, by the way. Both the assassins are chaos, and both the ninjas are both the draconic heroes are, well, they're draconic, so they are talented. But marked is available to non-talented ninjas and assassins as well. And this set featured a lot of dagger support, with a particular emphasis on flick knives, and also rebuying daggers, or in like the assassin's case, like making them, like making a separate, different dagger.
Yeah.
Hayden, do you want to start us off with flavor?
Yeah, well, I think you give me a really nice lead in there, which is when you sort of were talking about Mario there, and I forgot that Marionette is a Chaos hero. And I think that's probably the biggest piece for me, is I think, well, it's not the biggest piece, but I think the set plays fairly well, or pretty well, from a flavor perspective. It's not personally my favorite thing, so when we get to my rating, I'll talk about my objective and my subjective thoughts on that in terms of what that lent into my rating. But I do think kind of so when they announced Hunted, I was like, oh, this is going to be quite an interesting sort of, I think there's a lot of flavor they can lean into here. I'm really interested to see how the set feels when it comes out. You know, we then started to see about, like you said, marked. I really like the mark mechanic. I think that's maybe my favorite flavor win of the set. I am so on Draconic, but I did like it in Uprising, and I thought it was interesting dynamic between Dromai and Phi in that set, and how Draconic played off between the two of them. I thought it worked. I thought it was really interesting, and I thought from a flavor standpoint it was quite good. So I was interested to see what that would look like. And I think, you know, from an assassin, I've never been a big fan of assassins, as Pankaj knows, but I do think flavor-wise they are kind of interesting, and I think Marionette is among the more interesting for sure. The chaos piece kept being a stumbling block for me. I'm like, what is chaos? Who is chaos? Sort of thing. The royal fealty thing for me is not my favorite. I think it's kind of fine. I don't really feel like it has much. I don't really look at Fang and be like, a royal, you know, that doesn't really, I don't really see that. So I think those are my main thoughts. I think lore wise, and then how that translates to cards, I think it's ended up being a little bit more bland than I expected. And particularly when I play with the Draconic side of things more than the assassin side of things, I kind of don't get much of a translation between the cards. So I think Fang for me is not that particularly interesting. I think the chain link piece I thought at first was kind of cool, but again, Draconic reactions and making things Draconic, to me, I'm just like, okay, it doesn't really get me going. You know what I mean?
Okay, fair. So, out of 10, what's your number?
I'm at a 6.5. I think the positives, I really like the mark mechanic. I think it works really well. So I think the flavor translation into cards is really good. I think the Draconic feels weaker than Uprising to me, like I said. The Chaos feels a bit undercooked, so to speak. Mario, I think, is the coolest hero, though. And I do think Slippy is actually pretty cool as well. And I think the design of Slippy is very cool, to be honest. So that bumps it up for me. But I guess that would maybe put me in the 7s, but then subjectively, it's not my favorite from a flavor and lore standpoint. Bumps me down to a 6.5. What about you, Pankaj? What about you?
For me, I echo your sentiments on the marked mechanic. I think that is a fantastic little like mini game thing that's going on. I particularly like how they really captured the feel of being marked, feeling dangerous. Like when the Mario or the Slippy, whoever like marks me, like I feel like there's a notable difference in the way I feel when I'm marked and when I'm not marked. I think they've landed that very, very well. A Fang as well, right? Syndra maybe a bit less, but there's other things going on for her. Like Fang also, when a Fang marks me, I do feel a little bit like, they are like a step closer to finishing the subquest. So I think the whole mark mechanic was landed very, very well. I do also like that despite all the heroes caring about daggers, I enjoyed that they each utilize daggers in a new, refreshing, and fresh way. Where Syndra is about rebuying back the same daggers. Marionette is about like using these daggers at opportune moments, like flicking them at you and then replacing it with like the stealth dagger thing. And then there's now a stealth dagger, which is also interesting. And then Fang is about making the daggers free. So despite all of them having this one core theme, it's executed very differently. And I think it was cool and effective. I'm going to contrast with you a little bit on the Draconic piece over here. I actually really like the way I like the way it was handled. Particularly, I like that it was a small evolution of Draconic. So I want to contrast this with Rosetta. When we saw Earth come back in Rosetta, for example, actually, like even Lightning, right? When we saw both those elements come back in Rosetta, there was this whole abandonment of fusion, which is what I sort of associated the elemental talent with. I was expecting fusion on top of having cards that care about being Earth and Lightning and Ice or whatever. And to me, that was, I don't want to say a miss, but I did feel like, oh, it's like we're taking it a whole new different direction. And what I liked about Draconic and Hunted was that it was like a small evolution of a Draconic. It was still the Draconic that we knew and we loved. It's about Draconic Chainlinks, it's about red matters. And then there's a little bit of just an extra touch, a little bit of extra spice with the whole fealty and the royal thing coming in. But it still felt like the Draconic that I knew, which is what I enjoyed that part of it. The thing that fell flat for me in Hunted is exactly what you said, chaos. Like, what is chaos? Like, chaos is basically non-existent. It's like there's the 6 agents, there's like the schism, and then there's the Spurlocked, the card as well. But chaos as a talent felt like it was not fleshed out. That was the only thing that fell flat for me. The rest of it, I felt, despite not being too into lore or something, I think when the set landed and I got to play with the heroes, like all these themes sort of coming together and, in my opinion, translating very well onto the board, to me, it did a lot for me. My rating is a 9 out of 10, where the only loss is because of chaos.
Yeah, so I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of what you said in the contrast to me with your score. And I think you personally quite like the feeling of the Hunted, right? Like the feeling it gives you playing the cards, the way that when you're building decks, you're obviously a big fan of Marionette, right? So I think that all makes a lot of sense. For me, just listening to you talk, I think the Fang one is the one I keep coming back to for me, in terms of you're like, oh, a small evolution feels nice. And I think that's what I almost feel like it went backwards a little bit. And I think that's probably our point of contention. And to your point, like you liked the fealty play in with that. Whereas for me, the royal kind of aspect of it it didn't click for me of like, oh, you make fealty, you're royal, so you're pledging that you're using your fealty for your advantage. It just didn't quite click for me. But I like the swing, honestly. I think it's good. And I really love the mark mechanic. I just want to echo. I think it's such. To your point about feeling in danger, it makes me think of the Ralph Wiggum meme.
Oh, right, the one in the bus.
Yeah,
is it? I don't know the character's name. I've just seen that meme a whole bunch.
Ralph, I'm pretty sure.
The Chuckles, I'm in danger. Yeah. So actually, I have a question for you. How did you feel about the departure from fusion as a mechanic when we came back to elements in in Rosetta? Like, did you have any reaction to that? Because I felt a little bit like, oh man, we're just abandoning fusion.
I have other problems with fuse, so
that's fair.
Yeah. I felt differently. To me, it's not the same. I think basically.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying like the departure from fusion was entirely a negative for me, but I did feel a little bit like, ooh, this doesn't feel like the same way I interacted with elements when I first saw them.
That's very true.
It did take it away from me a little bit. Whereas I did enjoy that in Hunted. It's like, oh, we're back to Draconic, and I know what it is, and it's the same themes and the same things it cares about, and here's a little bit more. Awesome. Okay, so we have our flavor ratings. We're going to move on to the limited experience, and I can start us off here, and then, because I'm sure you have way more thoughts about limited than I do. What I liked about this limited experience, I think all 3 heroes are relatively balanced, which is nice. I think Fang was clearly the 2-off slot, but like that's fine. It still didn't feel like, oh, if you're on a Fang seat, you feel like really, really bad, as opposed to, say one of the sets that came later on in the year. I didn't like how die roll dependent the games felt, and also I think the part that took away from the limited experience for me the most was how swingy the games felt, because it felt like one power turn or one off turn kind of just decides the game. So to put it differently, 20 health formats already are quite subject to the variance, as we've spoken about, but because in this set there was so much damage in the attack reaction step, it felt like it's not even 20 health, because once you get to 4 or 5 health, you still just feel like you can't really do anything, because the Marionette will just react over you and kill you, or the Fang will just react over you and kill you, or the Cinder's like poking you here and there and you just die. So it felt like even smaller than a 20 health format, because of how much evasive damage there was, and not enough options to deal with the evasiveness, it feel like. One thing I did like, though, I liked the equipment. I really enjoyed playing with the Tree Frog equipment set and the Red Alert set. I think they were very good additions to limited experience. I think they were very skill expressive on both sides, particularly when you're doing this math and like when you're doing your reaction step or like your end game damage math. The amount of Tree Frog and Red Alerts that were around was quite fun and engaging to play with, in my opinion. But overall, still felt very swingy, felt quite die roll dependent. And I didn't like that. That's when I felt the most what's it called? The vulnerability of like a 20 health format. So for me, I have it at a 3.5 out of 10 for the limited experience.
Yeah. So you think the balance is basically your positive. And the Tree
balance
Frog
is my positive?
Yeah, the balance of the three heroes and the Tree Frog equipment is like your... Yeah. I think I agree with all of your sentiments. I think the fact that equipment had to be so powerful to balance out just how much power was coming in terms of the format, I think to me speaks volumes in terms of, you needed the Tree Frog equipment, you needed the Blade Beckoner equipment, you needed to your heroes to have full sets of equipment to feel like they could compete. I think there's so many things that are just so tough to interact with. So I also felt like, honestly, the biggest knock for me is that it felt like after you played 10 drafts of this format that you exhausted it. And that's obviously a bit hyperbolic in some ways, but it felt to me as one of the shallowest limited formats and limited experiences that we've had, particularly in draft, I think. So yeah, I think it's solid. I think it's very straightforward, which is nice in some ways, but I don't think it's particularly fun, and it has minimal depth. High rolls, I agree with, like you said. I mean, sounds like I agree with you, if not think it's slightly worse, but I've given it a 4 out of 10. I guess I always hesitate to give limited experiences bad ratings because I still enjoy learning a new limited experience, even if it doesn't feel fantastic after 10, 15, 20 drafts. But I enjoyed my first 5 to 10 drafts. I think after that, though, it fell off a bit of a cliff for me in terms of it just felt pretty repetitive. But there was also some fun things that you could do. I like power and limited formats to an extent. So yeah, I'm 4 out of 10.
Like I said, we're being super objective over here. And definitely your preference for limited formats in general isn't affecting your rating, for sure, of course.
Well, maybe a little bit.
No, but yeah, I mean, that's just going to happen, yeah, like, obviously. Cool. CC balance / impact. Do you want to start us off here?
Why don't I start us off? Okay. I think that... Actually, you know what? You start us off. I think you should start us off.
Okay, sure. Nice little back and forth there. I think this might be I think this is close to my favorite ever in terms of CC impact and CC relevance. Syndra had immediate impact, but not oppressive. Like, people had to learn a new way of playing against her. But I don't think any high-level player has said Syndra is oppressive. I think the assassins have their place. Like, we saw... Marinette needed to wait for new to LL.
Yeah.
But after new LL, like, Marinette was around, and Marinette's like around right now. Slippy had his time to shine after High Seas came out as well. So like the assassins have their place of when the meta's right for them, they're gonna come in and be a force, which is, I feel like, quite like solid for like where assassins should be. Fang is on the lower end of impact for sure. He had his little moment when Slippy was around, when it was Slippy gravy meta. But again, for him as well, I can see how metas can evolve for him to be good too. I think if, for example, right now, if Verdance didn't have Scour, I think you maybe could reasonably even see Fang have a little bit of a splash as well. So like, I see where his place could be in the future as well. There's solid room for the assassins to be properly relevant again, solid room for Fang to be relevant. Syndra is still around, but not oppressive. There were a bunch of awesome expansion slots as well in this set. I was just looking through everything that came out. And I was shocked at how much like cool stuff there was in the expansion slot. There was Null Time Zone, there was Cull, Enchanted Quiver, Retrace the Past, Ring of Roses. Okay, Ring of Roses, I have problems with the card, like in general, like a one-off that's so impactful. But in general, there were lots of just impactful expansion slot cards as well, but not to the point of like breaking any of those decks. It was just like upgrades for everyone. The heroes like landed all well power level wise. They didn't dictate the meta, but they played in the meta. And so I was really thinking, I was like, what's my like drawback? What's the one gripe I have? And I couldn't think of one. And so I was like, I guess I'm just giving it 10 out of 10 because I'm not sure how it like what could have changed, maybe be a bit like I could maybe Fang should have a bit more of an impact, and so 9.5 out of 10. I did have 9.5 at first, and I was like, it's between 9.5 and 10 is like close enough for me.
The reason I went back and forth is I glimpsed at your 10 out of 10 and was like, wow, I think you need to lead this one off. Yeah,
Go.
I mean,
Bring me down to earth. Hayden.
No. I agree with a lot of the things you said. I think that I think you're so right about Syndra. I think Syndra is kind of in so many ways maybe the most perfect hero they've designed for Classic Constructed in terms of it had impact immediately, but not too much impact. I think you would argue that as time's gone on, it being the best deck in the format has warped things maybe a little bit differently. Like I think I could have done without Wrath of Retribution being printed. You know what I mean? Like I think I would have been okay with that if I'm going to knock them on anything around Syndra.
So a little spoiler, I think we saved that for our top 5 favorite and most hated cards in 2025.
Sure, that's
Yes.
fine. But I
because I do agree with you on that for sure.
if I'm going to knock it down, I think that's where I would knock Syndra down in terms of that. But I do think Syndra, for new players, for learning approach of the game, for learning, I just think Syndra is honestly such a good hero. So that's great. And obviously with Phi having really struggled to find the footing afterwards, I think Syndra as a draconic hero has been cool to see. People might say it's maybe slightly too powerful at points in terms of it's accumulated a decent chunk of living the gym points at the 0.5 multiplier, things like that. But I think it's in a really good spot. Marionette, I think from a CC balance standpoint is pretty good. I think it's a great sort of mid hero. Like it's not oppressive. It's an assassin, but it's not like crazily frustrating to play against. You can understand the play patterns of the dagger piece and the mark piece really nicely. It does some really cool things. I think Marionette is great. I think Slippy, it kind of went on this roller coaster ride of having a big opening weekend and was really spotlighted, right? And then just dropped off a cliff, showed up at London as a pick with the likes of Michael Hamilton and things like that.
London? Oh. Because I was like, it's like when Mario and Nu was still around, I was like, oh yeah, that's why Slippy, people even forgot that they were in the set, right? Because they're like, you can't play Slippy when Nu was around and give them go again on his stealth.
Nu was gone by the time we got to London, though. So Slippy shows up. It was obviously, I think, the best deck in the format, or equal around Gravy at one point. I know you disagree with that.
London was Enigma Aurora, right?
Yep.
That's
okay. Once we got to Singapore, I think at one point Slippy has been the best deck in the format. I think obviously it's been hit pretty severely with the bonds banning. So I think Slippy's been on a bit of a roller coaster, which is interesting. And then Fang. I just don't like Fang. I think ultimately it's such a whiff of design. I think it's such an all or nothing hero in terms of the games where you get to your fealty in the first 2-3 turns versus when you can't do it until turn 5 or 6 feels so polarizing. I don't think it's particularly fun to play against, honestly, and I personally don't think it's particularly fun to play either. As much as I bought into it at the start, I was like, oh, this is so cool, like has this kind of combo-esque mechanic and then builds into a value engine, and I think in theory that's all really cool, but it just doesn't play out quite how I would want it to play. So anyway, all that to say, also I would challenge a little bit on the expansion slot cards. I think that, Ring of Roses is obviously very powerful, but I look at it and I go, what did everyone else get? So Rangers got Enchanted Quiver, which is reasonable. Katsu got Retrace the Pass. But then I look through it and I'm like...
Which is insane.
Yeah.
The card is so good.
Sure.
Yep. But it's in Katsu.
But it's in Katsu.
Sure.
Thick-Eyed Hunter is...
Yeah, no.
It's not
Cull,
great.
Like,
yeah.
Cull is good. Null Time Zone's good.
Cull, I think, is the other one. And Null Time Zone is like a role player that has, some impact. But there's a bunch of cards where I'm like, we got Warcry of Bologna, Warcry of Themis, Chain Reaction. Rolling Fissure is like seen a little bit of play. Sabatons, things like this. I'm just like, yeah, fine. So I do agree that it might be the best of the expansion slots of the year, or close to. I think there's another contender. But I do think there's still some misses in there. So anyway, I landed at an 8 point. Where was my score? I landed at 8.5. I think it's very good for CC. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't. Not all the expansion slots were hits, but when I compared to something like Super Slam, where it's like there were like 2 cards in the expansion slots that mattered, like that's when I was like, you know what, Hunted actually had solid upgrades for a bunch of decks where people were actually excited to put these in their decks. Mm-hmm. That was like where I was coming from. Mm-hmm. Cool. So I think we both rated the CC side of things like quite high.
Yep.
I think we were fairly similar across. I think I was definitely higher on the flavor side of things than you were. but I think it was CC and limited thing was similar. So my overall rating is 8.5, where I feel like really the main reason I lost points was from the limited portion, but the rest of Hunted was pretty pog, and I'd be down to see more sets like that.
Yeah, I give it a 6.5. I'm balancing off the poor limited aspect with the CC aspect, and then the flavor is kind of in the middle. So I gave it a 6.5 in line with that.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to the fun one. Let's move on to High Seas, which came out on 6th June, and this gave us Gravy, Marlin, and Puffin. Gravy has been a pillar of the meta since release, and then Marlin and Puffin have been around. It introduced Treasure Island, which is the second macro we've seen since Rosetta, so this was definitely very shaping of the limited format. It was a cool new evolution of the macro, whereas in Rosetta it was a little bit more of like a stopgap of like, hey, there's Arcane in this set, here's one onboard way to deal with it, and that you don't need to draft. Whereas in this one, Treasure Island was definitely like, it changed the way you engage with the game. It introduced a new class, which is Pirate, and our first dual class heroes in CC, because all of these heroes are Pirate X, and since Pirate's a class, these are now dual class heroes. It's yet to be seen, I guess, how Pirate is functionally different than a talent like right now. Like we had Scurv, I suppose. But aside from that in CC, it does feel like it still occupies the talent sort of space. So let's go ahead and start with flavor. Hayden, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, definitely. I quite like High Tide from a flavor standpoint. Like, I actually like it a lot. I'm not a pirate person, you know, it's not really something that gets me going, or I'm like, oh yeah, pirates. I'm excited about pirates. So when I saw High Seas first previewed, I was like, okay, sure, I guess I'm kind of interested. But I do end up really liking the pirate theme. I like the flavor aspect of Gravy Bones in particular. I don't like the name. That is where I will still dock it. I still not. I've come around to it. It's fine now, but it was definitely putting me off a bit at the start. But in terms of once we started to see the cards and the undead theme and what the allies looked like and how that played out on art and things like that, I was quite bored in, I would say. I think all the heroes feel reasonably unique in terms of, you were saying about the pirate theme, like how does that come across? I mean, I think they all feel like pirates more or less to me, except maybe Puffin feels less of a pirate than the other two, right? But I also am still going like, what is a pirate in Flesh and Blood? And is it different to what we think of as traditional pirates? Or, you know, the gold, they're so closely tied to gold, right? And I know people have said, well, so is Kasai and things like that. And I think that's all very fair criticism. I think the heroes are all, like I said, feel pretty unique though. And there's some balance issues, of course, which we'll get into with the pirate cards. But I love High Tide. I think High Tide is such a cool mechanic, just as a flavor piece as well. So that was a big thing for me as well. I like a lot of the pirate cards and the way they interact with gold. We'll talk more about how they play out. I think the way they ultimately play out, they don't feel, I think especially through the lens of Gravy and how strong Gravy was, they felt in some ways a lot of the time like Gravy cards, unfortunately. And I think that was it was a result of just how strong Gravy Bones was. But I do think the cards are quite cool. Portside Exchange, things like this, like the way that makes you feel like you're on the high seas or you're at a port and you're a pirate, I think is quite cool. Also, honestly, like Scurv showing up in packs, people not knowing about it, that as a flavor win is friggin' massive for me. The world premiere was so hype, and maybe that, you know, influences me a little bit. But I really liked the set from a flavor standpoint this year, and for me it might be one of the best since Heavy Hitters. So I gave us an 8.5 on flavor.
Nice. I wasn't sure where to put the Scurv aspect of it. I put the Scurv thing into the limited experience.
Sure.
But I do get where you're coming from, where it can also be put in the flavor. It does feel like his suddenly showing up being a stowaway is sort of does fit on both sides. For me, the flavor, so I think there's some really cool things going for it. Like there's a parrot, which is cool. I think the High Tide is quite flavorful. Yeah. Like there's 2 blues in a pitch, so you're riding the wave. In terms of the hero specific stuff, like Go Fish, I think has a looting like pirate sort of feel to it, right? Look at the hand, grab something, steal, and you make a gold from it as well. Generally, the whole emphasis on creating and managing gold does have all these like pirate feels. I think my main gripe with it is overall, I still don't know what pirate means stand alone. This, especially since it's supposed to be a class. Like, if I asked you what does draconic mean, like standalone, I feel like the answer is quite straightforward. It's red matters, draconic chainlink matters. More draconic chainlinks, you have discounts certain things. It's like this core part of that talent. If I asked you what mystic means, you're like blue matters, there's transcending. When you transcend, you get chi, and chi can help you pay like additional costs for other things. It's like, it's nice and it's neat. For pirate, I feel like there is this gold matters thing, but there's also blue matters with high tide. Then there's also yellow matters because you want to discard yellows, and that's how you get gold off of a whole bunch of the cards like Portside Exchange and Tipple. And then there's also draw discarding as like a general like looting sort of mechanic. And it just feels like it's a lot, and it's not coherent. It's not like cohesive. It feels messy, I guess is a term. And then when I look at the only standalone pirate that we have, he's got none of that blue-yellow matters or draw discard thing. He's about rum because, oh yes, rum is also another pirate thing. So I'm just like, like when you look at Scurv, right? He's like, he cares about rum. He converts gold into rum, so he does have the gold matters part of it. But it's just suddenly like, okay, but the blue-yellow thing doesn't matter for him. But there's all these generic pirate cards that are blues, and once you discard yellows. So that's where it feels messy for me, where I'm not entirely sure where the generic pirate cards sort of fit into like every pirate. It does sort of, I would get in a CC balance of it does feel like they're all kind of just gravy cards. But like what's the like the pirate aspect of it? So to me, that whole thing just felt a little bit messy. I do agree with you. Marlin and Gravy do feel like pirates. Like when it becomes to like, I see how the pirates are working when it's attached to like the ranger. So like Marlin feels like a pirate, or like when it's attached to a necromancer, he feels like a pirate. Because there's a go fish thing, and after Gravy has the whole watery grave thing and everything, right? So I get that, but pirate as a standalone thing, I don't fully get it. And then Puffin doesn't feel like a pirate at all. And there's a very easy reason for that. If you go do a card search for pirate plus mechanologist, the only pirate mech cards are Golden Skywarden and Jolly Bludger. Jolly Bludger feels piratey, it's like stealing. But then, the rest of it is just like, and she only plays like mech cards. So yeah, so for me, the flavor side of things, mostly, like as someone who's like pretty excited to like see pirates come to Flesh and Blood, it just didn't quite land. I still don't fully get what pirate means except gold matters, because the rest of it just feels like it's a hodgepodge of all these different like blue matters and yellow matters in very light manners. I gave the flavor a 5 out of 10.
Can I respond to a couple of those things? Because some of these things that you said are things I've thought about actually. So for instance,
go on.
So there's two kind of key things you said, which is, so you're at a 5, right? And it makes sense from all the things you said. The first of all, the Puffin piece for me, right? Puffin is a sky pirate. High tide, high seas is set on the ocean, and Puffin's visiting. Puffin's hanging around, but the flavor of the pirate element in high seas is the ocean. It's not, and pirates can be from other areas. There's different types of pirates, and so I think to me that is why Puffin has, because I thought about this before. I was like, why does Puffin have so few like pirate cards effectively? And to me, it's because, well, we're not playing in Puffin's space in high seas. That's the way I look at it anyway. Whether that actually,
well, does she feel like a sky pirate to you then? Like, I mean, that's my rebuttal. So. Like, she just feels like a mech who's like there.
Okay. And then I think she does, but I less so. But I also think that's also partly setting. And then just on the mechanics of what is a pirate. I mean, to me, I kind of see pirate as like a class modifier in some ways. Like the pirate class is gold. That is what pirate does. But pirate is not a class, and it kind of reminds me of like merchant in some ways. Like it's almost like this class modifier is the way I see it. Of like, or you apply, you're like, they're an ex-pirate. They're this pirate or they're that pirate. And when they become a pirate, it modifies what they usually care about. So for instance, with like looting mechanics, like you just spoke about with Ranger, it's like, well, we do drawing in Ranger, right? We do draw cards in that. So it's like, but what happens when you apply pirate to it? Well, this is what it kind of looks like. Gold, I think, is inherently tied to yellow in many ways. And then the blue piece, I think, is the high tide piece. That's like, I think for me, it's like high tide is specific to the set for pirates. Gold is always tied to pirates. And then there's like a modifier that applies to each of these. The Necromancer, which we haven't anything to compare to because it's our first Necromancer. but specifically for Ranger and Pirate, I think that's where it's like, okay, then you get the yellow cog element, you get the yellow draw and discard element. So that's how I've looked at it personally. I'm not saying it's clean or anything. I agree with you, but that's kind of the way I've looked at it.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I do like the modifier part of it. I do like Marlin feels like a Pirate Ranger to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like I do agree with that. And like Gravy Bones does, like I see the pirate elements, and like we haven't seen Necromancer before, but he does feel like a pirate Necromancer.
Yeah.
So I do agree with that part of it for sure. Yeah. All right. Limited experience. Again, I'll start us off here.
Go for it.
Solid. I think Treasure Island is super sweet. I love how they took a risk, I guess, in a sense. Like with that macro, they're like, hey, we're actually gonna make the limited experience feel like different than the way these heroes like play in like say Blitz or something, or like CC. Aside from just lower power level of the cards, but like this whole game defining mechanic in the macro, I think was awesome. And it also led to two very different pacing of games. Like we saw gameplay where it's super grindy, where both sides are trying to deny Treasure Island, and then it racks up to like 6-7 counters before it finally starts giving someone gold. And then there's other types of games where people are just racing and you're just getting a gold every turn because no one wants to block. So it was like very dynamic on that aspect of it, where you had a whole range of different types of games. It was skill expressive. I think the Treasure Island management was very skill expressive as well. And then there's also all these cards that cared about them having more gold than you and stuff like that, which you could also leverage. So there was lots of back and forth that was awesome. Drawback for me was Puffin kind of basically being unplayable unless you're the one-off. And I know this is contentious, but I think even like once you look at like Proto Singapore, for example, there'll be two of Puffin pods, and they're both fighting in the O2 bracket, you know? Like I think that was a very common story throughout High Seas Limited, where unless you're like the one-off Puffin, it feels very, very difficult to get to 3-0 your pod on that deck, and being in the Puffin seat often felt like a disadvantage. The drafting process was, I think, quite interesting. There was just a small number of bombs, but like you had to care a lot about your ratios, which I really, really like. And then here's where I put the Scurv piece. Special mention, it was so cool just seeing Scurv suddenly pop up in the world premiere. Like we didn't even know he existed. Very much just a stowaway on the ship, and then introduce a whole new wrench when it came to drafting as well, because you're thinking about what if you end up in Scurv, and that's, I know, a strategy that some people try to employ, and it just added a whole new aspect to a drafting part of it. So solid limited experience for me. I give it a 7 out of 10, with the drawback being that one of the heroes felt quite far behind in terms of power level, in terms of desirability, which was Puffin, but everything else I think was amazing. So 7 out of 10 for me.
So everything else is amazing. You give it one knock, but that takes it down 3 points for you. Just curious.
Well, because that's one of the 3 heroes, right? This isn't the same as like, okay, oh, Chaos was underdeveloped. This is like one of the 3 heroes.
All right.
You actively don't want to draft. I think that's a pretty significant dent on the format.
Pankaj, it's okay to say that you have a 2-point tax for it being limited. It's okay. I've got it the other way. You can have...
We're being fully objective here once again.
For sure. I've got a it's so funny, you said solid, and I was like, he's going to give it 7 out of 10. As soon as you live with solid. Solid is 7 out of 10 every single time, right? I have to massively agree with you about Treasure Island. I think one of the challenges in designing a Flesh and Blood limited set is that when you play Flesh and Blood at 20 life format, like you just said, and especially when you play it at lower power, it often becomes about just value and turn cycles, and it can feel very same, I think. And obviously the mechanics of the heroes and all that can change it, right? But I think where I have some issues with, for instance, the Hunted is more about like power level, where I had issues with something like Outsiders, for instance, isn't about power level. It's about the experience feeling quite simplistic at the end of the day. And I think what this set does really well, even though it's somewhat simplistic in nature, while having some great, very cool mechanics in it, is Treasure Island absolutely just changes the dynamic of how you draft cards, of how you value cards in your deck, of how you utilize cards, of how you set up to play the game, in terms of, you know, the way you're fueling your hero, all these sorts of things. Treasure Island is obviously mandatory because the set just doesn't work without it. But not only it's not just like this thing that feels like, oh, you put Treasure Island on the table because if you didn't have Treasure Island, this limited format wouldn't work. It feels like it was purposely designed for it, right? And it honestly is a game changer in terms of it's an added element to how you draft, to how you build, to how you play, as opposed to just being a bit of we use this to make it work. And I got to say, that's what the macro and aria felt like, is just like, you need this because otherwise the format's not quite balanced. So I think it was such a massive move on. I think that is the biggest win they had when it came to the limited experience here. I agree with you somewhat on Puffin. It's clearly the weakest of the heroes. But what I would say is I don't feel that it's much weaker than the other two, maybe as much as you do. What I have a problem with in Puffin is that I think there's basically only 1.5 correct ways to play Puffin, and a lot of it involves fatigue, which is really boring and not interesting, to be honest. And that's probably one of the issues I have with the format overall. Really the only issue, honestly, is that I think there's a couple of strategies that don't feel particularly fun and feel like at times you just have to, depending on the way your draft goes, that you have to play to that strategy, and fatigue is a big part of that, I believe. What I would say, though, is I think the draft experience is pretty good, and I think the games that are good are really good games, honestly. Some of my favorite games of Limited, of draft in particular. So yeah, I think overall it's a great limited experience, and I think they did a pretty good job. I just have a little bit of an issue with Puffin, a little bit of an issue with fatigue element, but yeah, overall I really like it. So I gave it a 7.5 for the limited format.
Okay, you gave me some flack for having like one gripe with the format, which is Puffin, and bringing it down to 7.
Yeah.
And you have like one gripe with it, which is like Puffin and like fatigue. Okay, I guess 2 gripes of Puffin and fatigue, and you brought it down to 7.5.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Yeah, well, I think the fatigue's worth about 1.5 points, and the Puffin's worth about 1, so that's fine. One thing I want to say lastly, one thing that I think they've done really well is Scurv. You know something's really well balanced when people are arguing on both sides, it's busted or it's unplayable, and that was like Scurv and it shifted throughout. The last thing I want to say on limited is the sign of a good limited format is when you have a meta within the limited format. And I think High Seas got some of the way there, but not all of the way there. And the reason I say that is because we never got to a point where people were underdrafting Puffin and then Puffin became, meta again or something. And I think that cycle is really what you want to see. And I think we had that in Putnam's Vale, for instance. I think there was a real meta about the way that format evolved, and I don't think we've seen that, unfortunately, with High C. So that's probably my other slight, 0.5 point to a point, because I do think that is what makes a great limited format.
Cool. So 7.5 for you, 7 for me. All right, moving on to CC Impact / balance. Hayden, right. I'm going to ask you to start us off on this one.
Okay. All right, let's do it. Let's get the elephant out of the room, out of the way. Gravy Bones is obviously a challenge when you think about classic constructed balance. I think if you look at Gravy as it is today, it's good. I think it's in a good spot. I think it's something that I think is healthy for the game, and I do want to see. I want to see board state decks in this game. I want to see allies. I want to see permanents, or semi-permanents, as I like to call them, in the game. I think they are important to have. Obviously, the way that Gravy came out of the box was much too tuned. I think we can all agree on that. And I feel like that is obviously a massive damper on the CC balance of this, right? So I am really happy with where Gravy is now. It's taken multiple bannings for us to get there. I'm glad we're there. I'm glad we have Gravy in the format. What it did for, the middle chunk of this year, from release to us getting towards the World Championships in particular. I think once we got that banning and some of the other heroes were able to develop, I think it's been fine, obviously. Puffin and Marlin suck, and that's sad that they have like zero impact on the format. Puffin, we have seen Puffin and Marlin like pop up now and again. Puffin, I think they both had ProQuest wins, for instance. ProQuest wins. Yeah, and Puffin is like put up a couple of like random top 8s and battle hardens here and there and things like that. And as an aggro deck, like I do think it is, it's not Max, it's not Teklo, it's not Betsy, that's for sure. And neither is Marlin, right? And I know you've dabbled with Marlin at points. You've told me it's powerful, and you've tried to convince me to play it at a PT, which is crazy. But it's troublesome in terms of that. Really, the reason that I think they're tough is because they didn't get a lot of the cards that they needed to be good, and Gravy got them instead. But I do also think that's okay to not have super powerful heroes. If I look at the Hunted, right, like realistically, Syndra is the Hunted, and Marionette has been a great sort of support piece to that. I think Fang it's obviously a more impact than Puffin and Marlin, but not heaps more. What else do I want to say on this? the expansion slots. I think other than Burn Bear, it's really disappointing. Like, that's not great, disappointing. So I do think that's another big chunk in it. So all that said, yeah, it's a 4 out of 5 for me. I do think, like, I just want to reiterate, I think Gravy is, having something like Gravy is good for this game. I'm glad we've got to that point with Gravy. I just wish that we came out of the gate with this form of Gravy.
You said 4 out of 5. Do you mean 4.5 out of 10?
Yeah, sorry, I mean 4.5 out of 10. That's exactly what I meant. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, sounds good. Expansion slots. Claw of Vincerakai was also in this set, right? And I think that's I don't know. What are your thoughts on Claw of Vincerakai?
Yeah,
as an expansion.
Yeah, that card is really good. Actually, it did have impact. I think it's probably the right amount of impact I want to have. I guess the card's really powerful. Honestly,
it's very good.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
It
Burn Bear and
felt
Claw.
like it kind of. Yeah, it kind of flipped the Syndra Florian matchup. It felt like while Florian was like around for the 1 month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go on,
CC
Pankaj.
balance and impact. The high Cs. Okay. My main gripe. I legitimately am a little bit lost on how they were this far off on the balance between the three heroes in this set. Like, I feel like we were told Gravy's supposed to be like action point gated. Marlin was, I think, supposed to be a New Horizon, like bolt and shot type of deck, and just all these things was so far off how it actually played out. Gravy, to me, I remember like even like seeing at the beginning, it felt like a repeat of a whole bunch of design mistakes that we've spoken about in the past, right? Where the resource base is also where the power cards are. There's must-kill board state, which is like impossible for a lot of decks to clear. Like, especially when it's like 1 health allies like Rigor Mortis, 2 health allies like Sawbones. And then there's this offensive overlap that he's able to generate from gold, which was effectively free because of Tipple. And then there's also disruption on top of that with like Loot the Holes and like Conqueror of the High Seas. And it was just
Loot the
kind
Hold.
of
Loot the Hold
mind-boggling
wasn't
to me.
from the set, Pankaj. Let's just remember that.
Sure. Okay. All right. Fair. I guess neither was Sawbones then. But it was just a bit mind-boggling how far off like Gravy was in power level compared to like Marlin and Puffin in the same set. And then Marlin and Puffin are sitting there like, how do I make my first gold even? How do I even like start any sort of engine to do anything? Whereas Gravy is out there like in an action point gated manner going like Tipple, Swell, Conqueror, Rigor Mortis, Swing. And I'm just like, this just feels like we've spoken before about when they make the mistake the first time, we're like, okay, this is forgivable. But then when they make it again, we're kind of just like, wait, what? And I think this is the whole resource base being all these powerful cards was just kind of shocking to me on that front. And if you just like do a Fabry search for like mono pirate cards, you'll see that they're all Gravy cards. They're basically all, I mean, the fact that Marlin and Puffin, like the PQ winning lists, don't even run the flagship Majestic, Conqueror of the High Seas, pardon the pun. Like it should just tell you enough how skewed like the pirate part of the set was just skewed like towards Gravy. I think a big reason for that is that the other two heroes seem to have missed the memos that they care about blues. Like Gravy has an actual payoff when he puts a blue in the yard, and the other two like don't, but all the pirate cards are blue, like the port side exchanges and everything, and then also consistent discard outlets, right? Gravy's the only one that can fit like 15 to 17 discard outlets for the port side exchanges and like the tipples. Puffin like can't do any of that, and then Marlin can do it like once a turn. So like even when she had tipples, it's like you draw multiple tipples, you can't do anything because the second and third are just garbage, whereas Gravy just keeps going and fueling the whole thing. So and then even like Majestic like Tip the Barkeep, all this stuff, it just feels like that's all just Gravy stuff. For me, the CC meta in the aftermath of High Seas, like before the bans, was just like one of my least favorite times in like CC Flesh and Blood like this year. Like I had my calling Kansas trip booked and everything, and I didn't want to go because of it. I would have refunded it if I could. I'm just like, it's just in the end we have a set where one hero is MST level, and then the other two are like bright lights or heavy hitters level, right? And to me, it was just such a big miss on a whole bunch of stuff, which I thought like we knew like to avoid, like the resource based power and everything. For me, the CC part of High Seas was a 2 out of 10.
Yeah, fair. Very, very fair, honestly. I get it. I get it. And actually, to be fair,
Cool.
the fact you said you didn't enjoy that format at all, like at least I had like Slippy to play, right? And I thought it was really enjoyable. And I enjoyed playing against Gravy, even though it was so powerful. But yeah, it just gatekept so many things, right? So the actual balance of it, very rough.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you that I do like the way Gravy has landed right now, though.
Nice.
Like, it took us a while to get there, but yeah, I'm happy with like where he is right now. And it's like, he's like a player, he's not like turbo, just shoving everything out and like having just, to your point, like gatekeeping a bunch of stuff. I like the way he's landed.
What's your overall rating?
Overall rating, I have High Seas at 4 out of 10 with the limited experience doing a lot of heavy lifting there for me. I think the flavor was okay. The flavor was like fine. The CC thing pulled it down for me like a lot.
Yeah. I had a 6 out of 10. I think that I really like the flavor. I really like the limited. I think obviously CC brings it down not quite as much as it did for me, and I like the limited and the lore slightly more than you. So I think that's where I sit.
Awesome. Okay, next one. We have Pack Guardian Mastery. This one released on the 8th of August, and we're going to skip the limited rating for this one, obviously. This one gave us Valda, and it gave us a mill theme / archetype for Guardians, as well as a Seismic Surge Matters sort of theme for Guardians as well. Do you want to start us off with flavor?
Yeah, I like the idea of mono sets, right? I think when Bright Lights was announced, I was like super excited about what like a mono class set or a mono class set would look like. I think in the end, obviously, the experience of Bright Lights not fantastic. The hero power, all those sorts of things. But I think Bright Lights had decent flavor at least. Like I think the way you played the game, especially in limited, the way they played out, like it felt flavorful. Although it wasn't balanced and the CC heroes kind of sucked. The flavor I think was pretty solid. I think this is not the same level in terms of flavor. The mechanics just don't seem that relevant. We revisit Crush, but nothing really changes with it, and it's kind of just used as a bit of a power balance to me with the cards. There's new numbers on Heave. There's like Heave 2, for instance. Okay, that's fine. There's some more Aura stuff, but none of it feels that cohesive. And then also you spoke about the mill theme, which is kind of there, I guess. Macho Grande has a cool art upgrade, I guess. I struggle to find great things to say about the flavor of the set overall, honestly, other than it's Guardian, it's doing Guardian things. The bigger question for me is like, have we kind of lost sight of like what Guardians should be? Like it was really clear early on, and I think Elemental Guardians are like really interesting. For instance, I think Yal's interesting. I think Ultim was really interesting. Since then, I've just not felt. I mean, I'm not talking about Starve, obviously, but I think other Guardians have just really fallen short. Unfortunately, Betsy, Velda now to an extent as well, as much as Velda has a bit of a cult following and does something kind of cool. So I'm at a 3 out of 10 on the flavor, honestly.
I think I remember discussing this like when we saw the full set, and I just wonder how much of the flavor / the intention was maybe affected by also pushing crack shuffle play. Because so many of the cards in the set are these Guardian hate cards, which if you tell me in a space, say, like Smash Palace, where it's a whole bunch of Guardians fighting each other, I'm like, oh, these Guardian hate cards make a lot of sense. Or you're crack shuffle playing with someone, okay, cool, this adds a whole new dynamic to the game. But when you tell me Guardian Mastery Pack, that's not what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting tools for Guardians to beat up other Guardians. I'm expecting tools for Guardians, like give them additional direction, additional like archetypes, just give them additional impact in like CC. And I feel like that was kind of missed, right? I do like that there's new archetypes, like the mill thing, and now this whole Seismic Surge like package thing as well. I think that is cool. But I also expected more support for existing archetypes as well. Like the fact that like Victor got like one card from it, Jarl got basically nothing. And then, like it's called Guardian Mastery Pack, but I feel like the way it played out in the end was ended up being this is crack shuffle play with Guardians. And then CC Guardians maybe get a few toys, but not too much. So I'm with you on the flavor. We have the same score. I have a 3 out of 10 for it as well.
I know the bit keeps going, but it is called Mastery Pack Guardian, by the way.
Yes. Sorry, Mastery Pack Guardian.
I know the bit lives on, but just to be clear, we do know it is called Mastery Pack Guardian, even though we will call it whatever order of those 3 words that we like at any given time. Let's talk CC balance. I'm happy to kick this one off, I think. I think there's some relevant cards. unfortunately, the relevant cards are a Gravy Blue, a generic legendary that's a sideboard card, and then a sideboard generic popper, and then I guess you get Clash of Bravado. And honestly, that's how...
Test of Iron Grip-ish.
Sure, yeah. And
Yeah.
I guess, like, at a stretch. The problem is like, all these cards could potentially be... There's a bunch of cards that could potentially be playable, like Clash of Bravado, like Test of Iron Grip, like a few more of these other cards. But the problem is like, it just... Guardians aren't in the format, right? So the CC impact is just basically non-existent, other than for an existing hero like Victor, which, yeah, Clash of Bravado, that's really cool. And that is definitely something. That's why I've given it at least 3 out of 10. Because if Victor wasn't even in remotely in the format, I might have to give this a 1. I guess I can give it at least a 1 because it did give us our... What's the blue card that gives -1 to an attack for Gravy Bones?
Fearless.
Fearless Confrontation. And Call for Backup. I do like Call for Backup. I think that card is cool and excited that that sees play. But yeah, overall, 3 out of 10.
Cool. I have a just very simple piece on this one, which is the fact that the very next set had 2 Guardians in it and none of them use these cards, I think just speaks enough to like the level of impact that these cards have. Yeah. I have it at a 2 out of 10 for this one, CC wise. If you just replay this whole year without that set coming out, like nothing different happens.
Yeah, I
right?
think we can move on and talk about Super Slam. Honestly, it's not even worth. I gave it a 3 out of 10 overall. The set is just it's a big whiff, right? Which I think LSS know. So
yeah, Super Slam. This one came out 26th of September. We're going to skip Limited for this one as well because, I mean, it was just the world premiere and there wasn't anything else we did with Limited on this. It gave us Reviled KO, Lyeth, Pleiades, and Toughnut, which so far haven't had too much of an impact. Our KO is arguably something you should at least get a few reps into, but aside from that, not too much impact from these heroes. However, there was a little bit of an uptick in KO. Like, it did support old KO a fair bit. So there's a bit of impact on that front. Mm-hmm. It introduced Reviled and Revered as talents. It also brought us our first non-4 intellect heroes, which is really, really cool. So we're going to start off with Flavour here. I'll kick us off here. I ended up liking it, which is weird. I'm not a wrestling fan at all. I don't know anything about wrestling, pretty much. I don't really get the whole heel and... What's the opposite of heel? The crowd favorite? What's the...
Yeah.
Sure, that. Yeah, I don't really get all that, but when it came to the mechanics being explored in Flesh and Blood, I did enjoy how it came together. So, like, Intimidate on the Reviled side, the whole comeback energy on the Revered side, and then cards like Outside Interference and Big Bully, like, are all so flavorful, and in my opinion, just it landed the themes, the whole, like, wrestling themes, the whole gimmick of that, very, very well. So, despite not caring too much for the source material, if you will, or the source inspiration in terms of wrestling, I did enjoy how the flavor ended up panning out, and I gave it a 7.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I had this at a 7 out of 10, but I'm going to bump it up to a 7.5 because I agree with you. I think I'm letting my personal bias of not particularly enjoying... So there's 2 things for me that I agree with all the things you just said. I think the mechanics work so well. I think the flavor is so closely tied. I think it's very clear. It's very succinct. It all makes sense. When you play the heroes, you go, yeah, I'm reviled. So, like, I need to stay ahead. You know, I need to be on top of things to, like, dominate, to get, you know, to sort of get the crowd behind me. And I get fueled off people being upset that I'm winning, or, you know, I'm revered and I'm gonna have the comeback. I'm gonna be a comeback kid, and I'm all these things. I think that stuff's awesome. I'm not big fan of, like, the more gimmicky kind of stuff in Flesh and Blood, you know, and I think wrestling is kind of the thing that has always been in the DNA of Flesh and Blood. So, you know, shout back to Crucible of War as a set, Mandible Claw, right? An homage to, you know, wrestling and a move in wrestling. I can't remember who the wrestler was, but it's a direct reference.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, it is. It's a direct reference.
Oh, I had no idea. Wow.
My understanding is James White is a pretty big fan of wrestling, and so there's always been elements of wrestling, pop cultural lore or things like this in the game. And I think it's always been fine by me because it's always been a little bit more under the radar or things like that, but it's obviously really overt in this one because it's a wrestling set. And I think that flavor is fine. You know, I think it works really well. Like I said, I'm just not the biggest fan of it. So I think, you know, I'd give it a 7.5. Maybe I'd even see giving it an 8, honestly. I do think it works really well. I think it just takes me out of Flesh and Blood a little bit to an extent. That's the only thing I would say. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the thing that takes me out, breaks my immersion slightly, is just that it's actually called Booze and Cheers.
Yeah,
because we've had this conversation where I don't always feel like my battle with my opponent is happening in an arena. Whereas it feels like with these heroes, you're always in an arena for these mechanics to make any sense. That's the only thing that breaks my immersion slightly. But yeah, overall, I was surprised by how much the flavor actually landed.
Mm-hmm.
CC balance. I think the most impactful thing from this set was Light Up the Leaves. But it's not like just that. But KO also became more prevalent. Like, I mean, there was one in the top 8 of Worlds. Kasai kind of got more followers from this. In my opinion, the Kasai Copers could cope more, I suppose.
Yeah,
but I mean,
agree.
Blood Follows Blade is a solid expansion slot card for that. And then technically, Reviled KO and Arachne Huntsman, I put them in the same category because I do feel like they play very similarly, like a Fatigue-esque style. They're decks that you should get some practice games in against post Super Slam release. Reviled KO, you should at least get a few games in so you know how the deck works and what you should do against it.
Yeah.
Same for Huntsman with the whole Hunted and Hunter thing. So, there was like some impact, mostly in the Verdance and the old KO side of things. But none from the heroes actually in the set, or like barely any with the RKO. Lovers was expansion slot, and I guess brute support for old KO, and then still Guardians absolutely absent. So for me, I have this at a 3.5 out of 10.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on the CC impact, but I do have more hope, and also I think this injected fun heroes. Like, I think RKO and Lyeth are playable heroes, and I think only need a little bit extra to potentially get a bump. I think RKO is like solidly tier 2.5. Like, I do think that hero is actually playable. Lyeth, I would like it to be playable. I think it's super fun and cool, but I think ultimately it's just a little bit too weak. But I don't think it would take much. I mean, I personally, I think Lyeth and RKO are better heroes than Puffin and Marlin, and I think that RKO is a better hero than Fang, honestly. So I think people might disagree with that, but that's fine. But I do have some hope, but I agree. I think in terms of the impact it's had. So, and also good to bear in mind, this is the shortest amount of time we've had between a set and this conversation. So I'm going to give a little bit of leniency to that as well and see what happens. The expansion slot thing, I've got to agree with you. Light Up the Leaves, and then, like you said, Blood Flows Blade.
Hunter.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Blood Flows Blade, yeah.
Fine, but it's more Blood Flows Blade. But the real problem I have is the bunch of like chaff that got printed in the expansion slot, and there was probably a few too many reprints for me this time around, as much as I do want to see reprints. So yeah, I think for me, I'm at a 4.5 out of 10.
It's interesting. You bring up the hope part of it, and I think I put that into my overall rating, because I fully agree with you that like my overall rating is a 5.5, but I put an asterisk on it because I'm like, I think this set has so much potential. I think like just a few months from now, even like maybe after Pan, or at least like maybe this time next year, we're sort of like looking back on the set being like, it's really cool that where RKO and Lyeth have landed in like the CC meta, maybe even Pleiades and Toughnut. I'm a little more skeptical on how those heroes will have an impact. But like RKO and Lyeth, I fully see the potential in them. And if they do end up having an impact, I actually like that they didn't come out the gate like fully having like warping the meta or something. But yeah. So the 5.5 out of 10 for my
same
rating.
I think we've just done in different spots, because I'm also at a 5.5 out of 10. Yeah. I'm interested to see. Lyeth is so much fun. Honestly, I'm gonna have a lot more fun playing personally. No shade to you, Pankaj. I'm gonna have more fun playing Lyeth than I would Marlin or Puffin, even if those heroes got a good buff. Personally, I think Lyeth is just a lot of fun.
Just give me a quiver for Marlin that says this counts as a gold, and then I'm just maining that hero.
Then you're in.
Come on, please.
Well, this has been fun. I enjoyed looking back at these product releases. I think on the whole, it's been an okay year for product releases. I think we talk about some other retrospectives in the game so far this year, and we talk about OP, and we didn't talk about some of the minor product releases like the Armory decks. I think some of those have had success, which has been cool. So yeah, I think it's a bit of a mixed bag overall, but I enjoy doing this, and I'm looking forward to doing some of our other retrospectives on the year to close out 2025.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, off-season for Flesh and Blood, but I do think this is a great time to revisit these topics, which we always say. Like, when they release the new like systems in the game when they release the new, like, okay, this is the way we're doing PQs now, this is the way we're doing bannings now or something, we always say we're gonna need to see how this pans out. And I think this is a great time to actually reflect back on it and discuss how it panned out and actually look back and see how it panned out. So
yeah. Cool.
I'm looking forward to the future episodes as well.
Me too. Last thing I got to add, Pankaj, is that we got a few comments last week on my moustache, and they were positive. So I just got to let you know about that, just so you know. It's the way it is.
You do you. Although to me, it still looks, frankly, very much like you're like in the military or something.
Yeah, maybe I am. Maybe secretly. Anyway, we'll see how long it lasts. That has been episode 241 of Arsenal Pass, taking a retrospective and rating the 2025 product releases or major product releases from Flesh and Blood. More retrospectives to come to close out the year, plus a couple of fun things. Of course, our top 5, bottom 5 cards of the year, which is always a classic. We love doing that. I know you like hearing about that as well. So that's all still to come. Pankaj won't be here next week. I'll have a special guest joining me for next week's episode. Till next week, we'll see you in the next episode.